All right, everyone. There we will. Here they come. They're coming in. It's exciting. Tension is mounting.
Like you're on the plane and hoping that nobody sits next to you.
Exactly.
Like,
Oh, here they come.
nobody's coming in.
We have Donovan Jacobs, our first attendee. Thank you all for joining us. Rushfield Lunch. We're just gonna get settled here, get comfortable, get something to eat. Most importantly, and I'm Richard Rushfield, the host here, joined by my lunch partner this week, Meghan Daum. As people file in, we sort of take a little time to get to know you. Gonna ask you some cultural questions to find out more about you before we properly introduce you in the formal way you've come to expect on these in this media world. Um, so let's start. Megan, what are your favorite movies?
Oh
Tell
my
me about your
gosh.
favorite movies of all
That's
time.
like
Just your three favorite movies, and there is a right
what I would
answer
say.
here.
I was actually just having this conversation with somebody the other day. We were talking about screenplays and screenwriting, and I was reminded that I think the most perfect screenplay ever written is Tootsie.
Tootsie, that one's right. A
I'm
very
not going
good.
to say it's my favorite movie ever because I don't know how to answer that, but that is a flawless screenplay.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
haven't. I don't know. I've seen that in like 30 years. So,
CJ Pollock, the
I
acting,
mean,
CJ Pollock, unmatched. Anything he was in.
remember it as a what if you had to watch what would be your desert island movie that you'd take or
To watch over and over again.
yeah.
It would probably be something funny. What's also one of my favorite comedies is Waiting for Guffman. I could watch that over and over again.
Is that
Probably because I have trauma. I have theater trauma from my
yeah.
adolescence.
Is that your favorite of the Christopher Guest ensemble oeuvre?
I don't know. I mean, this is Spinal Tap. Obviously, is
That
the classic. I think Waiting for Guffman is definitely second.
yeah. No, that's a great film. What would be your albums? Your musical albums? You talk about music, and we're gonna talk about
Well,
this in your new book.
I do. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
right. I don't
yeah.
remember a lot of what's in the new book. Sometimes I forget. Well, I've been very militant about Joni Mitchell, and I feel that I know everyone loves her, but they love her in the wrong way, and they love the
Yeah,
wrong stuff. And I'm a real evangelist about middle period jazz era Joni Mitchell, Hissing of Summer
interesting.
Lawns, Court and Spark. Those are two
Inter-
of my favorite records.
Interesting. Yeah, it's an important thing that we don't deal with enough. That people like things in the wrong way, and they sell that's kind of the plague of our generation. That are things being discovered, but by people who don't appreciate it properly, or uh,
Yeah, even Joni hated her early work,
yeah.
and we talked about it in one of my books, The Unspeakable. I have the centerpiece of essay of that book is called The Joni Mitchell Problem, and it is
Hmm.
about this very phenomenon, which is being recognized for your worst work. And
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with her. I had dinner with Joni Mitchell many years ago.
Wow.
The
Wow.
highlights of my life, and she
So
said,
I'm having lunch with someone who had dinner with Joni Mitchell. So
"Yes,
I'm almost having a meal with Joni Mitchell.
practically. We should just start
So
smoking American spirits as she did
please.
throughout." But no, she said, "I hate the early stuff. It was really bad and uninteresting.
Wow.
And thank you for not liking it." Basically, she said to me. So
That's great to hear. It is great to hear that great artists can dislike their own work as much as I dislike my
oh,
own. The What about a book? What book would you bring to your island, or books
what book?
besides your own?
I would
Would you bring?
never bring my own. Are you kidding? That would
You
be a reason to go to a desert island.
what if you use it to flag down a passing ship? Like,
They
look,
would they would
I'm a
keep
published
going.
author.
My books would be
On
too small. My books are too small. I would, if I was
New
going
and
to wait,
Notable,
yeah.
1998. Please stop.
Oh my God, I don't know. Probably some like very meaty novel. The Human Stain is my favorite novel, I would say. I don't,
Is that right?
if you're going to answer that, Philip Roth, Human Stain.
And what are you watching now?
Oh, I watch a lot of YouTube videos about the housing market. So
You,
yeah,
you
I
got
recommend
a
that.
one track mind there. It's
Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah.
really good if you're not following, some of these YouTubers talking about the housing crash that will never happen. You're missing out on the discourse.
What is there a great like real estate talk that you're or housing TikTok sector that I'm missing out on where people just get down about real estate and make and really like crazy new ways of looking at real estate and mortgages and all
It's
this.
there's a world of they call them crash bros, and they are guys on YouTube. They tend to be a lot of lenders, people who used to be on the lending side, investors, and they've become influencers. And they a lot of them are based in the Sun Belt and in Texas and Florida, where actually the market is crashing. And they tell everybody that it's only a matter of time before everything crashes, and you too will be able to buy a house. And so I was like a target audience for that, and so I got very wrapped up in that.
The okay, we now I think we have a quorum now, and I think everyone's gotten their food, so I think we can formally start. Once again, I'm Richard Rushfield, columnist of the Ankler, and this is the Rushfield Lunch, where every week I invite a person I'm interested in talking to come and talk, to come in and talk to me and eat while I ask long-winded
I
questions.
didn't. Yeah.
And this week we are whoa! This week I almost knocked over the tripod. The We're privileged to have the great author and voice of my generation. And that is not that is not a compliment I hand out easily. How, as a Gen X patriot, you know how much that means.
Mm.
But I'm delighted and proud to welcome Meghan Daum, who has a new book. And we always start out called the Catastrophe Hour, which I read on Kindle, so it's not
Oh,
as exciting to hold up. There we go. Thank you very much. Uh, the So tell us about your book, Meghan. First of all, before we get into all this other stuff, so this doesn't
um,
get
yeah. The book, it's a collection. So I'm an essayist. This is my seventh book. So I am an author of books, but I am at core an essay.
seventh.
Seventh,
That's
I know, right?
okay. Are you going to be?
Um,
Are you? So are Did you, like Tarantino? Did you announce at the beginning, say, "I'm going to do 10 books, and
you
then I'm
know,
going to stop"?
I
You should.
it's funny that you say that because I more and more feel like 10 is a good amount and then die. Like it's not really retire. It's more die. I mean, I haven't, there's people who've written like hundreds of books and that kind of stuff or
Yeah.
done, or, you
Well,
know,
you can always change your mind and go back on it,
yeah, but I don't know.
or
I
just
think,
claim you didn't say it or that people misunderstood it. But
yeah,
I think you should throw that. Are you ready to announce today that your career will have 10 books? So this is the seventh of
sure.
10.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Let's make it. Wow,
Okay.
we broke news here today already. But go
Uh,
on, tell us about the new one.
So this is a collection of essays that I wrote basically over the last 10 years. Um, so I was writing, kind of during the Trump era, I was writing a lot for this Medium publication called GEN, as in generation. And it wasn't just blogging for Medium. They had an actual stable of columnists and we had real editors and I was, writing it. And I wrote like pretty robust pieces, and they were heavily paywalled, so most people didn't read them. And I also had stuff that I had just sort of written and was sitting around, and I also had some newer stuff. And so, yeah, this beautiful little independent publisher out of the UK called Notting Hill Editions, they had come to me and they said, "Oh, do you have a book for us?" And I said, "Well, how about we collect some of this stuff that's accumulated? And so we did that, and they said very wisely, you need to write some new pieces. So I wrote 3 brand new pieces for the book that have never been read by anybody. And yeah, it's I wasn't really sure that it had what the theme was. I mean, I was like very obsessed with aging and death, so I
Yeah.
was kind of embarrassed about that. I
You,
don't.
I have to say, as a member, one of our commenters claimed that you made a face, a grimace when I claimed that we are of the same. When I posited that we are of the same generation.
No, I didn't.
So
Not at
the
all. This
let's
is.
set that. I understand if you did. I that
I, I would never.
you
That's well established.
you should be. You were at least 1 year below me in college. Let's
And
so
at most,
which
probably.
is which was a critical year. It was so uh, a different time. Anyway, your book sort of delightfully is kind of the most. I mean, it is called the Catastrophe Hour, and that is kind of a celebration of the spirit of catastrophe. In an early essay, you talk about watching a divorced elderly man who flew across country to walk his dog around the block in the cold of New York just about once, and described that as a perfect moment for you, which I found really relatable, embracing as
Oh, really? Have you been doing
I
that? Flying across the
no,
country,
but I
walking a
that
horse dog?
I in my heart, that is where I live, and it just sort of bracingly uh, sort of dark and pessimistic about the time, and hopeless in a way that makes me excited for life again. But how would you describe that feeling, and why you got there, and why uh, for us, maybe it's just you and I, maybe it's not the whole generation, but that is such an uplifting feeling.
Well, so the moment that you're describing is from an essay called "The Broken In World,"
Yeah,
and that was I wrote that I was probably my. I mean, these pieces were written starting in my mid 40s to up to the moment, so we can do the math. Um, but that was about this interesting thing that happens. I think when you go through something like a divorce or any kind of sort of trauma or thing, I hate to overuse the word trauma, but thing that tends to happen later in life if you've kind of like screwed up, if you're not perfect, if you have failed to live up to your Facebook reputation, let's put it that way.
yeah,
And people become very candid with you, and sort of people that you see with their curated lives on social media are suddenly like wanting to sit down with you face to face and tell you really what's going on with their lives, and in fact their children are not all perfect, and in fact maybe their spouses are cheating, and it's like it's mind-blowing, and it's incredibly comforting, and it reminded me of I felt like at that point in my life the world and the people around me were going from like this very stiff kind of shiny patent leather to kind of broken in leather. Like the world became very supple, and everybody was very forthcoming about failure and flaws, and it was such a better place to be in than where we had been in our 20s and 30s, where we were just kind of putting on a good face. And so I found it a real delight, perversely.
yeah. So let's go back to that to our 20s and 30s. I think both of us sort of came into to media in the I guess you call it the Roman orgy days of media, when the baby boom was living living very full. Condé Nast was at its height. It was, but before there were even blogs to make fun of it.
Right.
I I think of it as like I got to the Roman orgy just in time to get a seat at the kids' table, and
Yes.
I was allowed at the kids' table there. Never, which was pretty good,
Was
pretty
funner
good as a kid.
was funner than the adults table. Right?
Yeah, but it's you know, I got yelled at by one uh, by one magazine that my receipts were not adequate for when I turned in my receipts from a trip to
Not high
Vice.
enough. Your expenses were you weren't expensing enough. That was the
That
yeah.
it would make the other writers look bad in comparison, and that we couldn't let it get out that you could go on a trip for that. I will quote that I was told that this magazine in particular does not accept receipts from Roy Rogers. Uh, was specific
Your
quote.
story about the a zeitgeist Roy Rogers piece because that's
I,
also the kind of story
I
done back then.
we were traveling and we were in our 20s and we were trying to be considerate to the budget, which I was told was not permitted. But that's how. So you know it wasn't enough to amass generational wealth, shall we say. But to enjoy the party. So how do you think? How did you think of it? You became you know, far more than myself, uh, a noted author and voice and officially a voice of our generation with your first book, my Misspent
Mm.
Youth, which is a classic and everyone should look back on. So tell us about that experience, becoming a voice of your generation back in that time.
It feels a little meta to talk about this because I know you spoke last week with Lena Dunham, who is
Yeah.
a voice of a generation, famously.
Yeah, and by the way, there's an expectation on our guests each week that they top the previous guest. So you're expected to outdo Lena and
And
set
yeah,
and hopefully set the bar high enough that Ben Dreyfus next week
oh,
will not be able to surpass. So
he'll never clear this.
no,
Ben clear this.
yeah, no pressure, but
Uh, well, my misspent youth. Yeah, the voice of a generation. I feel like that's just one of those things that like appeared on some press release at one point and just stuck. Like it's not. It was not decreed from on high. I'm not sure.
no,
It's
but
not like
that you're being much too modest. That book really captured a zeitgeist of our people who were kind of adrift and sort of aspiring for what we didn't quite know, and we didn't quite know how to organize ourselves to get there. And you really you that book truly captured something.
well,
So
thank you.
you cannot shrug off that.
Well, I will. What I will say. So, a couple of the essays in that book had been in the New Yorker, and the title piece my misspent youth, it was about going into debt. It was basically about how it's you can manage to I was writing for all these magazines, as you say, and getting like more money per word than would be imaginable today. And I was in my 20s and doing pretty well. If I had lived in any other city, I would have been living, quite well. But I was spiraling into debt. I had student loans. I didn't have health insurance. The usual. I was a freelancer. I was like going out for expensive drinks every night. Low rent Carrie Bradshaw, let's put it this way. Like
Yeah.
low rent. Um, and I really wrote about sort of the creative economy of New York City and the way that I anyway grew up in the suburbs watching Woody Allen movies and like thinking that the people who lived in these apartments were genuine bohemians because the paint was peeling on their radiators and they had frayed Persian rugs, and these were not rich people, these were artists. And I didn't connect until much later that these were actually very expensive apartments and people with generational wealth. It's like, those scenes in those Woody Allen movies were actually shot in Mia Farrow's apartment. Okay, like this was not some set design of a starving artist or a working artist. And so the piece was about how I managed to get in all this debt. I was in about $80,000 of debt by the time I was 30, and I had sent it to the New Yorker, which, by the way, was the only thing anybody wanted in the whole world was to be in the New Yorker. And now I think the kids just don't care anymore. I know they don't care because they tell me they don't care. Um, and I had a piece there, and I sent it.
Is that the when you're in the New York, describe the describe the reaction to having a piece in the New Yorker back then and a mention in the New Yorker now. How that's evolved.
Well, a mention now is barely a mention. It just gets like absorbed into the ether. No, back then, if you were in the New Yorker, that was what everybody was talking about that week. Whatever was in the
And
magazine.
every person you had ever met in your life sent you a letter then saying they had seen you.
Yes, or
Pretty much.
called, or picked up the phone and called. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
would be riding the subway, and everybody would have it. Same with the New York Times. The
I
first few,
remember when we'd have a contributor's picture in a magazine, just like for having written a little chart. Like
a listicle,
so many people would come out of the woodwork
right?
and say we saw you. And now and now
No, now they're just embarrassed for you.
that you're associated with
Rightly so.
these
Yeah, so the
with
piece, you're right, I sent it to the New Yorker, but I can tell you that they didn't like it. There was some editors that loved the piece, and there were some that just thought it was terrible. That this was unseemly to talk about money in this way. This was sort of off brand, and the piece was almost killed at the last minute. I sort of found out later, and like a lot of the assistants and the younger people rose up and said, "No, this must be published." So it came out, and the editors had given it the title "My Misspent Youth," and then a few years later, when I went to collect the pieces for the book, I had a different title for the book, and I didn't want to call it "My Misspent Youth," mostly because I knew my parents would be embarrassed by it and take it personally, like somehow that it was a reflection on them, because everything was a reflection on them. And they indeed were embarrassed by it. And I had to fight with the publisher. I didn't want to call it that. And they insisted. And they were right. It's a good title.
It is a good title. It's a good book, and everyone should look it up and read it. But in those days, the media was still sort of a hierarchical thing. Like once you published something in the New Yorker, then you were allowed to write anywhere, and you were allowed to publish books. And did it feel like you had established a stable living that you could sort of
No,
count on and
no,
what
I
was it
was
like
still
then?
temping. No, I was, I would go to temp jobs. No, I always was working in like offices in Midtown, answering phones. I was registered with temp agencies. At one point, I think I said this in the piece, I worked at Columbia University Press when I was in grad school there. And then they paid so little that I would call in sick and then go temp in an office in Midtown somewhere. No, I think when those pieces came out, I was answering phones. I was going over galleys faxed to me in these random offices that I was working. No, I was always hustling all the time. It was never enough, Richard. It's never enough.
But that's because you were living in New York, which was insanely expensive. If you had been living here at that time in the '90s, my rent was $400 in the
In
'90s
LA.
here. So
Oh
in
my God.
West Hollywood, yeah, on
Yeah.
Sweetser.
Wow. Yeah, and I also didn't have any family money. I mean, that was the thing I just never understood. It's like, oh, like your parents are paying for this apartment? Like I'm really naive that way. Yeah.
The by the way, I should say this more. If you we have so many friends joining us. Hello to Alan Salkin. But if you have questions or comments or complaints or heckles, please add them in the comments, and we will attend to them. Um, so the so okay, so you're that began your real estate obsession. Take me on the quick tour of your real estate journey to the kind of denouement in the catastrophe hour
Oh,
of.
well, my real estate obsession began before then. I mean, I moved dorm rooms every semester in college because I was so miserable, and I thought that pulling a geographic would solve everything. Um,
I
no,
did the same actually.
you really?
Well, every year at least. Sometimes every semester, but at least every year I moved.
I should have just moved colleges like that. That I was not going to do because
No,
I'm
that
very mentally
that
comfortable.
what that would have required actually assembling a transcript and getting application from other places and filling things out and mailing things. So
Right.
that took too much organization.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I just love houses. I love architecture. I love moving. Hate to travel, love to move. So yeah, so the right, I ended up moving to Nebraska after my Misspent Youth came out, to save money, got into more debt, ended up writing a novel there. Was able to had a very lucky sales with that novel. I mean, nobody bought it. It wasn't lucky for the publisher, but it was lucky for me. And ended up coming to LA and had a career here, LA Times columnist, continued to freelance, etc. But yeah, so I did a really a thing that I think a lot of people will relate to as struggling artists, which is that I attempted to build a house in the hills in Los Angeles by myself, not physically, like with I don't know how to like hammer wood and lumber and stuff, but yeah, I had this brilliant idea in 2017 that I didn't want to be in any more bidding wars, and it was too stressful to try to buy a house in this market. And that I had a very simple plan, and I was going to buy a piece of land with this money that I had from selling another house when I got divorced, and do this. And yeah, I spent 7 years trying to do this. It was like Fitzcarraldo trying to get the ship up the mountain, and that's the title essay of this book, The Catastrophe Hour. That's what it refers to.
The uh, so what? Why was it? So what? When it sounds simple enough. You had a little plot
Yeah.
of land. You weren't building Hearst Castle there. It was a
No.
simple little thing. So why did that become such a ordeal, and
Well, I don't
why
want to
did
get
to
far
becoming
into the
impossible?
weeds, but I did know going in that I was trying to. This is boring to people. I was trying to develop in like the worst zoning area in the city, like notoriously impossible. Um, and there's just it's complicated. It's on a hillside, and then COVID happened, and the prices of everything quadrupled, and I just ran out of money. So I got it, like all the permits finally, got everything ready to go, shovel ready, as they say, and
Mm-mm.
had to sell it. And honestly, this sounds hyperbolic, but it was the most like tragic thing. It was the grand failure of my life when I had to give up on this property. Like it just felt like a catastrophe, and it felt like an existential catastrophe in ways that I also talk about in the book. Kind of, I guess I thought that for all the ways in which my life doesn't feel like an adult life, if I managed to accomplish this thing, it would make it all okay. And so giving
Yeah.
up on that just felt like a really colossal failure.
But it's sort of I think of your real estate adventures, which are more adventurous than my own, and is it not sort of the story of our generation that I mean to build a house and to have it go well and succeed and then to sell it and to move up uh, to a bigger house and to grow with the real estate market. I Part of me feels like this, like the story of media. This is not the lot of our generation. This is not what we were meant for. We that just not ours to succeed at these things. That
Oh,
the
it feels wrong, right? To it feels a little boomerish to have succeeded. So are you feeling some guilt or some? It's
No,
kind of like
I'm
stabilizing.
not. I feel deep envy towards the boomers and the young tech moguls who have succeeded in these things. At another, but on another level, I know that for our generation, I come back to this, that living in catastrophe and living in things not working out is our sort of comfortable space,
Yes.
and no, there. and I want to segue from this into the culture. No, no accomplishment will feel legitimate. That it will all feel that as soon the day you built that house and moved in, how would you really feel there?
Oh, I would feel like there's no way I can afford the property tax on this house. I would have had to
Yeah,
immediately sell it.
yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
but the and so let me segue into the. I'm sorry, awkward segue here, but I have top of our list that for us to fix the culture, and so we only have half an hour left to do it. So uh, when you look around at this, well, you're a cultural observer. You take in a lot of this. We as our generation, we have a little distance from all this. Uh, what do you think is wrong with this with these people with this world
Oh,
right now? What
I
do you to
I
sum it
think
up?
it's a lack of cigarette smoking. Um, yeah,
I regret I've been off I quit about 25 years ago and I regret it every day
worst
since.
thing
So
I
I
ever
got to
did.
say, yeah,
Worst thing I ever did. And the worst part is I
oh,
can't stand cigarettes now. I can't be around them. I can't. The idea of it is disgusting. And it was truly one of the great pleasures of my life. And I was a much better writer. And no, I seriously, I there was something about when we stopped having like sort of built-in meditations, extremely, cancer causing ones, to be
yeah,
clear.
yeah,
uh, just upped the stake. It raised the stakes. It made it all the more intense.
yeah, yeah.
We had these kind of interstitial meditations, and then that was replaced by looking at social media, and I think that's ruinous.
The I mean, but it's also it was such a culture. It was like, I mean, the extent that, like, in our young world, of young kind of writers, artists, and everything, everybody smoked. I mean, it wasn't just
Well, the cool
well,
people did, the intellectual people did,
yes, yes.
not
Who
the
else?
I don't
Who
know
else? Who
people.
else were you hanging around with? The Yeah. I mean, it was ubiquitous. There was no such, and I remember when cafes I went to first put in a non-smoking section, and that seemed such a sellout to like that they would have this section where you're the area where you're not allowed to.
It feels
Little
discriminatory. I mean, it's stigmatizing to non-smokers. I mean, why point that out about them?
Yeah, yeah, and it was just you would see the people who would go into that section would be the people who came there to study, like to get some work done. It was
Have
like
problems. We don't need, and then at one point they outlawed it in bars. I mean, I remember that in the
that's right.
late '90s in New York, you could not smoke in the bar, which just yeah. I mean,
I and
that's a
so in my young career, just starting as an entertainment journalist, I one of the very first like sort of wasn't a job but a freelance gig I was offered this sort of trade paper that was doing this thing. They did these things at festivals, and they published one at Cannes, and they offered me to fly me to Cannes to write for them. But they said, and I was very excited, and go sit in this office in Cannes and see movies and churn out 10 articles a day or whatever it was. But they said just before I signed on the dotted line, um, they said just so you know, we're up on the 15th floor of this building. It takes a really long time to go down stairs. Like the round trip is like 45 minutes, like because the elevator is really slow, and so we can't have you going down to smoke during the day. So can you get through the day without smoking? And I was like, well, no. So I didn't
you
take.
can go on the roof. Was it closer to the roof? Because that
No, they were like they're very clear that the only way you can smoke is to go all the way down to the front of the building,
ugh,
and that's a
yeah.
really slow elevator, takes a long time, so you won't be able to smoke during the day.
You know,
That's out.
no, my first job at Condé Nast. So I worked as an editorial assistant at Condé Nast right out of college. all the editors, many of the editors smoked in their offices. And on my first day in the job, the woman I was working for, very eccentric. I don't want to say she did try to physically strike me a few times, but okay. She, Megan, just running to her office, and her wastebasket was on fire. And I needed to literally put out the fire. I'd thrown her cigarette into the wastebasket that was filled with, printed out paper mock-ups. And yeah, that was day in
But
life.
so to bring this around again, what the what smoking, I think what you're getting at, if I can put the words in your mouth, smoking gave you what smoking did. I remember a film professor explaining that smoking, maybe he might have been quoting Godard on this actually, that the cigarette gave you a distance and detachment from the screen, and I think that is what smoking did from the world. Also, it gave you kind of a built-in kind of ironic detachment from the world, and absent that cigarette device to give you a little bar, you are thrown into the melee
Yeah,
of general culture and then take it much too seriously, which is where we are.
that is
Can I
profound.
put those words in your mouth?
No, that is profound because a lot of my smoking romance came from watching French films and European cinema generally. Yeah, because I remember like feeling like I'm in the world, like, but you're stepping back from the world, but I also felt like I was living a life. There was texture to my life. And yeah, it takes you out of your head. I mean, I guess this is what they say about like service and volunteering and stuff. Like you could pick up garbage off the side of the road and maybe you would feel the same way, but like I'd rather create the garbage on the road.
Yes,
I
thank
not
you.
that I don't throw cigarette butts on the road, but you know what I mean. But no, there is I mean,
But
it is a forced meditation. I mean, I have a piece in the book about staring into space. I mean, I remember a student asked me one time, like, what did you do when you were in your 20s? Because she was in her 20s. And I said, honestly, like when I think back on that time in my life, I see myself staring out into space, like staring at or drinking a cup of coffee, you
but
know.
looking like amazing doing it with your coffee and
I
cigarette.
wouldn't know, you
Uh,
wouldn't know because I didn't take any pictures of it and post it
no,
on.
but in your mind as you picture yourself, like you never look better than sitting with your coffee and cigarettes staring into
No, and
space.
the world, your surroundings were like there were books and magazines and records, and there weren't like screens around and stuff
Yeah.
like.
No, I honestly didn't know this was going to turn into a pro tobacco
Did everybody
uh,
leave yet? We're gonna
conversation.
leave.
I think they've gone to alert the authorities that this an unauthorized conversation has broken out.
I think my parents are dead, so I can talk about this all
Yeah,
I want.
but let's talk about it. Everyone. Alan Salkin is still with us, thank
Alan
God.
Salkin's still
Um,
here.
yeah. The this culture taking itself uh, too darn seriously and take everything in it too seriously, which has been a topic of a theme of yours in a lot of different ways. Can you talk about that and about where the culture is and why everything we're doing just seems like a constant we're just like a constant nervous breakdown over anything from the new Marvel movie to executive orders from the president. It's just
Yeah.
like
I think I said that in my book, The Problem with Everything, the one before this. Like I can't like something like we're choking on our own hyperbole. Uh,
that's a great
and
thing to
I don't
reference.
get choking. I might have said drowning. I feel like it was alliterative, so whatever would start with an H. But uh, I mean, hysteria is monetizable. The algorithm favors it. If you don't have a screaming thumbnail for your YouTube video, no one's gonna watch it. That's why nobody watches my YouTube videos. Definitely gonna watch this one because I'm gonna
Yeah,
owning you.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
and I think it's just the sort of vernacular of the
You can drink Ankler tears.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
Um, That's so like 7 years ago, Richard.
I'm sorry.
Drinking man years, yes. Um, yeah, I don't know. But again, like if you don't, I don't want to be, you got to take some things seriously. We are in a crisis. We are in a crisis. But the problem is if you're hysterical about everything, you lose all your hysterical cred and
Yeah.
can't access it when you need it.
So let's get into this moment and the crisis because I am torn about these things. Well, not torn, but I'm torn about how to view reaction things. I kept looking at it technically. I kind of do feel like we are in a crisis. I kind of feel like the say political leadership is out of control, and that bad things can happen from it, and we should be against it. And I see some of your friends, Megan, there in the kind in what I see is that there was a movement of people that were they're kind of defining animating principle was kind of being annoyed with like progressive piety
Yeah.
and progressive everything, and I share that annoyance and the complaints about it 1,000%. But but I kind of feel like for me, I feel like, and I say this as someone that nothing makes me more uncomfortable than being part of a movement or part of a cause or being for anything, even being for being against anything, it makes me comfortable. But I feel like this is a moment when maybe there's some things more important than that, and that the annoyingness of liberals, like,
Yeah.
yes, I hear you, but maybe we got to put that on the back burner for a couple years here.
Um,
What do you say to that?
yeah,
How do
I broadly
talk
agree.
talk sense to me?
I mean, ultimately, what's happened now is exactly what I and others said was going to happen. You get this excessive progressive overreach, and the pendulum is just going to swing way far in the other direction. It's exactly what I said. I mean, I started
Yeah,
yelling at the left 10 years ago or more, and I said, if you guys keep this up, you are handing it to your enemy. Every single time you do
no,
this, feminists, and act hysterical about things that are not true, like that 1 out of 4 women in college gets raped, for example. There are myriad other examples of this kind of just zombie hysteria. Every time you do that, you are handing ammunition to your adversary.
and
And
you are on
just
the record
kept
with
doing
all of
it
that.
and kept doing it and kept doing it. And there were a lot of us who were really committed to being nuanced about this stuff. Like, I'm not going to be ham handed. There's obviously a lot. I mean, I was on the left. Much of it is very good and useful. But unfortunately, again, I think the algorithm favored the loudest people on the margins, and the people who I think were sort of, in the center heard a lot of stuff that was happening on the left. They heard the worst of it because they weren't hearing people like me and arguably you. And so they went over to the right. And this is what we now have. What we have now is terrifying and appalling, but it was largely created by the bed that was made by the left. And so
So
it's
so now that we're there and we recognize mistakes were made on our own side, but here we are. What do we do? Can we send some people to the corner and say, you've annoyed enough people, so just stop talking for 10
I'm not
years?
I'm wary
Or,
of that, because the thing that happened on the left, which, after Trump was elected the first time, was this sort of we need all hands on deck sort of thing. You can't speak. We can't have any complication around certain issues. We can't have these discussions going on because we need everybody on board for the resistance. I don't like that at all. So I don't want to do that again here. I think that we are so siloed that there's plenty of room for all kinds of conversations. It's just there's going to be narrower and narrower swaths of people who are hearing them. I mean, my hope, I don't know what the answer is. My hope is that what's going on is so egregious that it's going to burn itself out. I can't imagine that most people, if they actually comprehended what was happening, would continue to stand for it. The problem is they don't know it because nobody has the bandwidth for this. Nobody's paying attention. Everybody has disengaged for their own mental health purposes, including a lot of people I know who were people who are obsessed with the news and activism and freaking out around the clock, and now out of their own self-care instincts have stepped back and in some cases aren't noticing what's going on.
Yeah, and I listen. I have always applauded the instinct to not pay attention to politics, because I think almost everything we see is just silliness and everything. But it does feel like a moment when yeah, and this is how uncomfortable does it feel like to feel like, okay, we have to be for. I mean, for talk to me about why I should feel like to be involved and be active and take a stand is not a complete sellout of everything that I the entire my entire Gen X
Your apathy brand.
legacy. Yes, I grew up believing we could take a stand for nothing, and be part of nothing for an entire year. So am I that why is it okay for me to betray that?
Oh, well, I don't know. I think it depends on how you wear it, you know? I mean, it's more just like this is patently absurd what's happening. I don't think you have to put on a whatever version of the pussy hat is going to emerge from this
Yep.
and march in the streets. I just think I think that everybody has to you have to sort of figure out what you do best and keep doing it. Like I you know what annoys me is when people say like why don't you talk about why aren't you talking about tariffs on your show, or like why aren't you talking
Yep.
about
Yeah.
people being rounded up and put on planes, and like I'm very concerned about that, but I just don't think that I'm the right person to talk about that. There's many people talking about that and they know more about it than I do. So maybe that's a dodge, but
That is something about media. Like it, I mean, it in our day when we started, you very much stayed in your lane. Like if I'd even ventured an opinion about a TV show at a magazine, I would have been like thrown out of a window. Like, let alone like speaking about politics or about trade policy, I would have they would have had me locked up. But now everyone is an ex. Every economics writer has a White Lotus a blog that they keep, and uh, every person who does red carpet is could tell you all about trade policy. Like how did this happen?
yeah, I know we've started going to celebrities for. I mean, this was the merging of entertainment and politics. I mean, maybe the Daily Show was to blame. I don't know. All that stuff started happening. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here. I don't really know how to answer this. I mean, maybe the thing to do is for people in my world, this kind of heterodox, free speech, dissident left world, is to really don't enable like our peers that are enabling the administration. Like, just don't let them get away with it. Just say like you're wrong here, or you need to back up your facts. Don't let them spew endlessly, and don't make the same mistake that people made. You know, don't make the same mistake. Don't do the same thing we were criticizing others for, which is just like caring more about going to the cocktail party and getting along than actually saying what's true. I mean, so much of the reason that people on the left, especially in places like academia, in Hollywood, so many of the reasons that people didn't speak up was because they didn't want to get on the wrong side of their social community, which is understandable, but that's just not a good enough reason.
I hear in your voice, and as someone who wrote a new book entitled "The Catastrophe Hour," you can hold it up if you like. The the catastrophe hour, and who celebrates the darkness and we should note also Megan and I are members of a very elite 5-person text chain largely devoted to talking about when people die. So
Although we
we're
did know about the attack on the Houthis, I have to say
yeah,
we clued into that.
we were, but we largely we paused to when Wink Martindale passed, we learned about it first from our little tech chain. We paused to think about it. But despite these predilections, I hear a certain optimism in your tone. Is it just that things have gotten as bad as you always said that they would get, or
I
do
like
you
to
see a light at the end of the tunnel? And can you tell me everything will be all right, or what? How are you feeling?
Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know. Honestly, I'm glad to be the age that I am. I don't like getting older, but I feel so grateful to have like lived in the times that I lived in. I try to look at it that way. I mean, you have kids. I don't have kids, and so I feel like
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of skin in the game. It's interesting. You know what I do a lot of is I talk to my friends who do have kids, and say, how do your kids feel about the future? Like, especially if they're teenagers, young adults, people starting their lives. And the kids are actually kind of optimistic in that young person way. And often they're still really engaged. Like, I know a lot of young people who are very, very politically active and extremely upset about what's going on, but they're still excited about life. And so if those
The
two can coexist, I suppose they can coexist.
the we shall see. Uh, do you know what weekend are you going to Ren Fair? I have a question I've
Wait,
noted to
what?
ask you. Have you set your Ren Fair plans?
My Ren Fair? What do you mean?
Yeah,
Renaissance?
yeah. Are you there's 3 weeks left of Ren Fair. Are you attending? Do you have your costume? How
No,
do you
no,
feel?
I don't
How do
attend.
you feel about what are your feelings about Ren Fair?
You mean like as a concept? Is this a particular thing? Sorry, I'm so out of it. You mean like
No, this was a non sequitur from where we were.
a
Going
Renaissance
to
fair?
Renaissance Fair, the Renaissance
You know,
people. It was the.
in my
Uh,
Mhm.
are you open to that? Is that something you've
No,
taken part in? Have you gone to Ren Fair or?
no, I hate those people. I'm really mean to those people. In my Misspent Youth, there's a piece that has a really weird title. It doesn't even matter what the title is. I got sent on a magazine assignment back in the early 2000s to go profile this family. They were a very early like polycule kind of family, and they were super into Renaissance. They all slept with each other, and they were not necessarily supermodels, if you know what I mean. And they were different ages. And they actually had a side business where they made pagan statuary. And they also created unicorns. Like they took ponies,
Right.
attached horns to them. And I wrote the meanest piece about these people. They were very Ren Fair esque. And I was snarky little at New York City, you know what? And I wrote a really mean piece that was funny, uh, but I wouldn't
And
write it
what?
now. But I think I said my
And
piece.
did they like stand in front of your apartment and greet you with sad with like their unicorn costume in a trash barrel and all that? Alan Salkin wants to know if you actually hate unicorns.
No, you know what's funny? I was at the LA Times Book Festival this weekend, and there's like a bunch of people. Sort of, they were trying to move the crowd along, and somebody behind me said, "Step aside for the unicorn! Step aside for the unicorn!" And I was like, "Wow, somebody is a really some author is like been anointed the unicorn. Like she's so rare, she can do it all, you know." And in fact, it was a guy, a mascot, a guy in a huge unicorn mascot costume.
Yeah. I'm going to blow your mind right here. This 2 weeks from now will mark the ninth straight year, excluding COVID, that I have taken my kids to the Ren Fair.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
trash.
How do you like that? No,
What?
no, they live for Ren Fair, I think. So they claim.
Okay. Well, I feel like one of these times you were taking your kids to Legoland. Is this the next step?
that Ren Fair is a big step. I will tell you why. We sort of in this cultural world, beggars can't be true. You, it is Ren Fair is a huge thing. It's massive. I don't know. At my school, we had what are the people that did the jousts on the lawn? But the Society for
Yeah, they
Creative
were. Oh, the
Anachronism.
Society for Creative Anachronism.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yes.
we had that, and I mocked them as much as anybody.
Oh, yeah.
The but the the Mara says this is taking a weird turn, and
Well,
I
what you said.
apologize for that. I, uh, I'm sure it's Megan's fault. But we you will see there as many people go to Ren Fair in a day as go to Disneyland in a day. It's a huge thing. All with these homemade costumes. There is not a there is no there's nothing digital in the entire place. The track of Ren Fair is a mile and a half long. It's a huge thing. There's nothing digital. There is no corporate sponsorship. There
Oh,
is no you do not see a single Starbucks sign
maybe they
or
couldn't get corporate sponsorship.
probably quite possibly no corporation would be all these people are wearing these costumes. There's the pub crawl chain in which everyone is publicly intoxicated, which my children are not, but they enjoy the spectacle of it. It's uh, in these days we have to take creativity where we can find it, and you don't find it without kind of digital supervision very often. So that's why I like that. I'm planning a kind of innkeeper's costume.
Oh,
So if you can picture that, sort of master of the house.
okay.
Um,
You have a
the,
staff, a warlock kind of thing, or a staff?
no, just kind of like sort of like a big coat and maybe holding a chicken leg.
Innkeeper is like a Ren signifier. It's like you can't be like the Bob Newhart kind of innkeeper.
Well, that would be good, but different one. Anyway,
I want to go to a Bob Newhart fair.
I mean,
I think we should put that on.
can't or the Wink Martindale Fair
Mm.
for that. Yeah, that's not as. Um, anyway, we do have to somehow we went down a weird passageway there, but we do have to wrap up. Our final question on the lunch always, and this is you kind of have written 7 books answering this question, so I don't know if you could summarize it more succinctly than that, but we asked what advice would you give to young Megan
Oh.
entering media today in today's world? What would
Change
you say?
my name. Change my last name. Do not use that last name. No, it's unpronounceable. My own family doesn't know how to pronounce it. I had changed
Why
it.
is Daum so hard?
What's that?
Why is Daum so hard?
Well, is it Dom? Is it Down? Look. This is a longer thing, and I've talked to my own audience about this. But again, my parents took everything very personally, and I thought at the time that if I took on a pen name or something, that they would be insulted. And no,
You've got a great.
really
You've got a.
no, I hate it. I
I mean,
hate.
if I had to throw stones at your name, which I wouldn't normally do, my complaint would be that I don't know that there's a name that has as many different spellings as Megan.
Oh, Megan, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
but
to
mine is a
stand.
common variant.
Yeah, but I mean, there's some people do MEA. Some people sometimes there's
Why
the
Megan?
sometimes there's the H.
Why?
Sometimes there's not. I if maybe your next book can be about standardizing Meganism for
Yeah,
society. That
I
would
would.
be a real
I know.
accomplishment.
Yeah, I would. No, seriously, I would. If I could go back, change my name, and I would have also spared my parents a lot of embarrassment. That was
Yeah.
the irony is they were very, they were very possessive, and yet they wanted nothing to do with what I wrote. So,
Yeah.
but it saved everybody a lot of grief.
Thank you so much for joining us, Megan. These always I never know where these lunch conversations are going to go. And this one shocked and surprised me too. You set the bar very high for our next guest, Ben Dreyfus, who will be joining us next week, and be on him to top this. And I think he's got his work cut out for him
I'm going to be
there.
that. All right. Well, thank you. A pleasure and a privilege as always.
We would love to have you again as the culture evolves and the great pageant moves on. So
Anytime.
hopefully, and I'll be seeing you. I'll be seeing you on the group chat as soon as someone dies.
Oh, okay. I'm also going to be at Romans in Pasadena next week, May 7th, by the way, if anybody wants.
Absolutely, and everyone. One time the book is Catastrophe Hour. Everyone should buy it. It's a great read and great tour of this moment in our history, really. So please buy it and go see her at Romans. And I will talk to you soon, Megan.
Thanks.
Take care.